Welcome to Nice and Blunt. This is part 2 of my start-sit decisions for every game. The first part has all of the early games of the week, Thursday, the Madrid game Sunday morning, and then other games in the early morning time slot. But this video has all of the late afternoon and primetime games on Monday night and Sunday night. So if the game you're looking for is elsewhere, go ahead and check that out on the channel. It is posted already. So there's only 2 teams on bye, so let's get it started. Those 2 teams are Indianapolis and New Orleans. The Saints and Colts are inactive this week, and at least for the Saints, that's been a pretty solid matchup all year. Average stats across the board, so no significant upgrade is missing or downgrade. Overall, a neutral matchup is taken away. But with the Colts, at least it is somewhat difficult against quarterbacks and running backs, but wide receivers and tight ends are missing a top 10 matchup. In Cleveland, the Ravens are coming into town in another divisional game, and last time around it was kind of a low-scoring game the first time between these 2 teams, but there are some obvious starts. Lamar Jackson is always in your lineup. There's no chance you're benching Lamar. However, if you look at this Browns matchup, I could see some problems looming for the offenses. There's going to be some really rough wind in this game. In Cleveland, we always know that wind's a factor, and not only is there a 25% chance of rain in 51 degrees, but the wind is expected to be at least 20 to 25 miles per hour. And last time there was heavy wind in Cleveland, the gusts went up to 50 miles per hour. It is possible that there were no upside in the passing game in this matchup. It's possible we get very few pass attempts from both quarterbacks. So because Lamar runs the ball effectively and because he's just such a stud, I'm still going to start him, but I will be downgrading him in the rankings this week. The wind is not a joke at all, and I don't think he has the same level upside. I don't expect 4 passing touchdowns from Lamar this week. So they could definitely win 40-10, wouldn't shock me, but they could also win 17-6 and get it done on defense. If the wind is really going to be this bad, I could see it limit the offense a little bit, but I still trust Lamar. I would still start him. If you drafted Lamar, he's kind of matchup proof. You kind of don't give a shit, but against Cleveland, the matchup's bad on paper, and then the wind makes it more difficult. So perhaps he's more of a flex play at quarterback, but based on his track record, even a bad game from Lamar should still get you 20 plus points. So I'll still start him, but not feeling as good about it as I normally do. But because the wind is a factor and it's against the Browns, the Ravens are a must start. There is no way I'm benching Baltimore's defense if I have them with 24 mile per hour gusts. Dylan Gabriel going to play like shit. So Ravens, a must start, definitely top 10 in my ranks this week. The wind definitely going to help them. But because of the wind, the game script is definitely going to benefit running the ball. And I could see 25 carries for Derrick Henry. So definitely going to start Derrick Henry. He'll definitely get the benefit of that volume. And although he hasn't scored touchdowns lately, the volume has been there, the yardage has been there. He should be pretty effective and at least get 1 touchdown to pad the numbers. So start Derrick Henry. He'll probably be ranked in the top 10. The volume should be one of his highest of the season. But in this matchup, we've seen Cleveland run the ball like crazy. When wind's a big factor, Quinshon Judkins had an insane game last time around, but the matchup is much more difficult for him this time. The Ravens defense ranks number 7 against the run, and in the last month they have been getting more difficult. It is down to number 18 in the last 4 games. So a neutral matchup, not a big downgrade, but not as easy as you might think. The Dolphins matchup at the time was a top 5 spot for Judkins. So when he scored almost 30 points with 3 touchdowns against the Dolphins, that was a big reason why, but volume was also a big reason why, and I could see 20, 25 plus carries yet again. So Judkins going to be a volume monster. If the wind is this bad, they will not throw it very much. So not the best matchup against Baltimore, but the wind really benefits him. Got to start Judkins, expecting monster volume. But if it wasn't against the Ravens in this type of weather, I would definitely start Cleveland's defense. They were elite last time they played in the wind, and if not for Lamar Jackson, I would definitely rank them top 10. But I respect the Ravens offense enough. The Browns get an upgrade because of the weather, but then a downgrade because of the opponent. They will just be a flex play a streaming option, but not a lock in the top 10. Probably worth your time, but I understand ignoring them because of the Ravens. However, because of the wind, I don't think Zay Flowers is anywhere near as safe. I don't think he's a good option anymore. And although he's had a safe floor all year long, this could be one of those games with less than 20 yards because of the volume. So the wind is really the only reason I am downgrading him. Otherwise, he's been a lock in the lineup, a very safe flex play at the worst. But I just don't see it having that same upside this week. If he doesn't score a touchdown, you could get burned. But if he gets a bunch of checkdowns close to the line of scrimmage, he's dynamic enough to take one to the house with some speed. So still some upside, but definitely a big downgrade. Odds are I'm going to bench him because I don't think the volume will be good. Last time in the heavy Cleveland wind, I told you to bench every pass catcher. It was the right decision. Even Jalen Waddle shit the bed in that spot. So I consider Flowers on an equal footing with Waddle. I don't think he's a safe start, but still talented enough to be a low-grade flex option this week against the Browns. But maybe the weather forecast will get better closer to kickoff if the wind is not projected to be this bad. Maybe we will bump up Flowers in the rankings. But assuming the forecast doesn't change, maybe it gets even worse, I would expect the Ravens to run the ball enough where Justice Hill factors in. Last week he scored a touchdown. He does get the ball a little bit. Derrick Henry's pretty old. They don't want Derrick Henry getting 30 plus carries. If they can avoid it, they will give the ball to Justice Hill. So he factors in enough to be a flex consideration, but odds are a backup running back is not cracking your lineup. If you look at this Browns matchup as well, it is a terrible downgrade. So in general, I'd be a bit worried about Henry, but because the volume I think will increase, I do think Justice Hill is somewhat interesting. In the last month, though, the Browns' run defense is getting a little more easy. It ranks 26th, not dead last. So still a downgrade, still bottom 10. But because of the wind, I could see volume kind of negate some of the downgrade and just lead to potentially a garbage time touchdown. Perhaps Justice Hill in the second half does get a lot of carries. But for the same reason, I could see the Browns just run the ball like crazy. Jerome Ford probably gets added volume, but probably not enough to move the needle. I'd probably still bench Jerome Ford. Like I mentioned, any player in this little corner is someone I'd be embarrassed to endorse. So no thanks if I can avoid it, but maybe the wind leads to good game script. There is a chance Jerome Ford does get more volume. But because of the wind, I'm going to bench Mark Andrews. I do not trust the volume going in his direction. Even if he scores touchdowns, he's not really getting you more than 30, 40 yards. So with low floor production, I need that touchdown to have any value with Andrews, and I just don't trust the passing game. In this type of wind, I don't think they'll be throwing it very much, but maybe you trust Andrews more than I do. I think if there was ever a spot to be fading him, I want an excuse to do it. The Browns are also a bottom 6 matchup, definitely a downgrade. They do stop opposing tight ends well, so not going to trust him. The wind is too scary. I'm also not going to trust Rashad Bateman. Definitely don't expect high volume. I would rather bench Flowers if I could. I'm definitely not starting Rashad Bateman in the wind. Definitely going to bench Rashad Bateman. Isaiah Likely is starting to factor in, but not enough to really move the needle. So if I'm benching Andrews, I'm definitely benching Isaiah Likely, but I could see him factor in rest of season with some high upside. He still has talent, some speed when he gets the ball. He's hard to tackle, but not going to start him this week. The weather, I think, is worth fading, and that means Jerry Jeudy, definitely worth fading. Don't trust him with Dylan Gabriel. Last week he scored a touchdown, but against the Ravens, no thank you. Even in a top 5 matchup this season, I will not bet on Jerry Jeudy. I'm also going to ignore Harold Fannin and David Njoku. The matchup is bottom 10 this season, and in the last month, it's down to bottom 6. It would rank 27th. So with bad weather, no thank you on Njoku. Maybe a touchdown hits, but I'll bet against it. Same with Fannin. I told you to bench both of them last time the wind was bad in Cleveland, and it did work out. It's not worth your time. The wind is too big of a problem. So the red flag continues with Dylan Gabriel. He's never a safe start. Definitely benching him. And also not going to start Cedric Tillman, who does factor in, but not enough with the weather forecast. So no thank you with them. And I'm not starting any receiver, but because some extra rush attempts are expected, maybe Dylan Sampson gets added volume. I wouldn't start him, but he is my dark horse candidate for the Browns. And then I could also consider Keaton Mitchell getting extra volume as well. I could see Keaton Mitchell pop off some big runs in the second half. But the Browns run matchup is really tough. On the year, it's the toughest for any opposing running back. So in general, I don't want to press my luck. I think this is way too risky with either long shot. No thanks with Keaton Mitchell. No thanks with Dylan Sampson. If anything, Justice Hill is more appealing, but probably not worth it. And same with Jerome Ford. Pretty embarrassing if you have to start either of those two at running back. But maybe the game script does make it worth your while. The wind will be a problem in Cleveland. In LA, the Rams are hosting Seattle, and this game could be the best game, not just of the week, but of the year. Seattle already took part in a massive shootout against Tampa Bay, and I could see the Rams offense be even more prolific. So could be like a 40-50 shootout. I really see a lot of offense from both sides of the ball, but they both have somewhat legit defenses. It is a divisional matchup. It's also possible we get let down if we overestimate the outcome. So not gonna go fully overboard. When you look at these matchup stats, there are some tough ones, especially the Rams against running backs have been the second most difficult on the year. However, in the last 4 games, they are getting a little bit easier, down to number 24. So just bottom 10, not bottom 2. But still, I don't think I trust the Seahawks backfield enough. This matchup is a downgrade, so not dying to endorse them. And then otherwise, the only like non-downgrade or neutral spot would be Seattle versus tight ends. It's an elite matchup for the Rams tight end core, which is a tight end by committee these days. There's all 4 guys getting involved. So I'm just going to stick to the obvious names we're definitely starting. Puka, obviously a lock in the lineup. He's a top 3 receiver, no doubt about it. But honestly, JSN might be more valuable than he is at this point in time. JSN has been just so lights out this year, so matchup proof, and he has stayed healthy. So JSN is outproducing Puka in fantasy this year. So both are elite plays, definitely both top 3 at the position. I'm definitely starting JSN and Puka Nacua, but Devontae Adams is a lock for touchdowns every week. So always starting Adams. He had an oblique injury last week, did come up limping a little bit tight after one route run. Late in the game, it was kind of sealed though. And reports indicate if it was a more competitive game or like a playoff game, he was healthy enough to come back. So not expecting him to miss, but obviously the practice reps are worth monitoring. If Adams plays as expected, I would start him, but that's not a guarantee at this point in time though. It's only Tuesday. I would assume he gets back to the practice field this week, but Kyron Williams, always a player I'm starting. The matchup is not good against Seattle. It is bottom 6. He's not going to play as well as he did against the Niners, but I still trust Kyron in the top 12 at the worst at the position. The volume is just so good. There's no way you're benching Kyron Williams. So definitely start him, but I think both quarterbacks are worth starting. The Rams are a bottom 10 matchup for Sam Darnold this week, but I kind of don't care. I see it as much more of a shootout than low scoring game. So unless they settle for a bunch of field goals, I don't see this blowing up in your face. I would expect JSN to have a great game, and I could see some revenge outcomes for Cooper Kupp as well. So Darnold has been lights out this season. I think he's a very reliable start. I think he's just as valuable as last year. So that's a top 12 quarterback. I think he's worth a start. I don't think you should be benching him unless you have like really good depth at the position. So start Sam Darnold, but I think Stafford is an even better start. The touchdown production has just been so elite for Stafford. It feels like he's already on pace to hit 30 touchdowns by the end of this week. He's been just on fire. 4 touchdowns again last week. So cannot bench him. He's just so productive. And this Seahawks matchup is sometimes vulnerable against receivers. On the year, it's bottom 10, but they have been injured at times. And I do still think there's an injury looming in their secondary right now. So Stafford should be fine, especially at home with no weather to worry about. I would expect him to play very well like he has been as of late. So both I think will be in my top 10. I want a piece of this game wherever I can get it, but I think those 6 guys are the must starts. Otherwise, I think the running backs for Seattle are just flex plays. The Rams run defense is really difficult, but last week they gave up another touchdown to Brian Robinson Jr. It's possible that Charbonnet and Walker still play well. It's been easier the last month, down to the 24th most difficult matchup. So bottom 10, not bottom 2. And maybe Charbonnet does score a touchdown and does cover you. But feels a bit risky. It's just the Seahawks offense that I kind of want to bet on. It feels like more than just JSN is going to have some value this week. So Charbonnet, kind of an obvious name, but the matchup is bad. I would rather go Charbonnet than Kenneth Walker. Walker, I still think is going to get vultured by Charbonnet. If one of them scores, it's not Kenneth Walker, but he's still really talented. He still could play pretty well. The floor should be okay for Walker this week. In general, touchdowns aren't what you're betting on against the Rams, and that's usually not what happens for Walker in the first place. So should probably still get you like 7 or 8 points, but don't feel great about either running back. The matchup is bad, so I'd rather bench them, but there's still no flex conversation for sure. However, I'm really tempted to upgrade Cooper Kupp significantly this week because he returned to the lineup. He was effective in last week's game. Rashid Shaheed was a non-factor. So in this matchup, it's definitely a revenge spot for him. I'm sure he wants to play well. Maybe the 2 matchups against his former team every year was a selling point to play for Seattle. I know he's from Washington, but maybe that also helped him make the decision. I could see Cooper Kupp really play well, and maybe they target him in the red zone. I could see a trick play. I could even envision him throw a touchdown pass to JSN. I think they're going to get him involved in this game against the Rams. So I am very tempted. I think the upside is kind of interesting, but I could also see Rashid Shaheed pop off. I could see Shaheed play very well. And because they added Shaheed and Horton might be coming back to the lineup, I don't think it's that safe to bet on either. But some high upside. I think this game is such a shootout. There is multiple players I think will have very high outcomes in this game for Seattle. So one of these 4 guys I think will have a really good game. Picking the right one is probably too difficult to do, and it feels a bit too obvious that Kupp will just have that revenge game for the ages. So it's probably somebody else, but I would probably rank Kupp higher than Shaheed at this point. I think Kupp is interesting, but one of these guys will play well. The other 3 might burn you. Good luck betting on the right one. But interesting bets for sure. I also think AJ Barner is kind of tempting, but against the Rams, it's not the elite matchup like it has been in the past, and Arroyo is also factoring in. So I'm just going to bench AJ Barner. A little too crowded in Seattle for my taste, so I'll avoid it. And then there is a chance that Torrey Horton does come back to the lineup. He missed last week after popping off for 2 touchdowns the week before, and even though they traded for Shaheed, I still think they want Horton involved in this offense. So too tough to trust. I'd like to see what it looks like with Shaheed on the field, but for now, let's fade Horton because he's injured. That's the main reason why. I just don't think it's worth your time. Too crowded in Seattle. But sadly, this matchup kind of gets wasted for the Rams tight ends. Tyler Higbee is my preferred option. However, they use all 4. They use Higbee, they use Davis Allen, they use Colby Parkinson as well. He's the one that scored a touchdown last week. And then they also use Terrence Ferguson. As someone who believes in this rookie, a second rounder with upside, if I was going to bet on one, it would be Terrence Ferguson. I think he gets targeted down the field enough where the yardage is most appealing with Terrence Ferguson, but the volume isn't safe for more than like 4 targets with any of them. So sadly, as a team, the tight end position will play well this week, but individually it's too tough to bet on one. My preference is Ferguson, but odds are Higbee still leads the tight end room, and it could go to Davis Allen, it could go to Colby Parkinson. They're all involved. It's pretty annoying. I'd bench all of them. I'd also bench Blake Corum behind Kyron Williams. Not going to trust him. The matchup's bottom 6, so Corum not safe enough to trust. But I think this game is more of a shootout, so although both defenses are really good and talented, I'm benching the Seahawks for sure. The Rams offense scares me. And then I did pick Seattle to win the game. I think the Seahawks are going to hang with the Rams and score a lot as well. So bench the Rams, bench the Seahawks. Don't drop them because they're worth holding on to. They're still pretty valuable. But against each other, I'd be benching them. But my long shot in this game would be Elijah Arroyo. I mentioned it with Barner. The matchup's not terrible, but I'm hoping for upside, and that's really only available with Arroyo down the field. Barner is like a check down tight end. Arroyo sometimes gets some shots down the field. So similar to Terrence Ferguson, both rookie second round picks at tight end are kind of being used similarly. I think Arroyo and Ferguson have some upside, but odds are you'll bench both of them. Not worth it, most likely. Arizona versus San Francisco is going to be an interesting, tight, competitive game. And last time around, it finished 16-15, mostly just field goals. So I don't want to be overestimating the output on offense. I don't think this game is a massive shootout. I'm just starting the obvious names that we always trust. Like Christian McCaffrey, always in your lineup, gotta trust him, but last few weeks have been a little bit mediocre. Last week, Brian Robinson did look better, so not ideal. He's kind of fading a little bit. Touchdowns haven't been there, but I still can't bench him. I'm still going to start Christian McCaffrey because I think you have to. I also think you cannot bench Trey McBride. He's been lights out, and the touchdowns are hitting every week with Brissett now. So McBride might be the most valuable tight end you can find in the league. So got to start him. He's at worst number 2. And then Kittle is now starting to pop off like I expected. He is back to elite at the position. So he's probably tight end 3 this week. Definitely a lock in the lineup. The only one I think might be more valuable is Brock Bowers. Otherwise, these two are some elite tight ends you cannot bench. Juwan Jennings played pretty well last week. He's been back to fully healthy and is playing well lately. The volume is locked up for him in this offense. He's clearly the go-to receiver, so not going to bench him. I would start him. The Cardinals matchup is at times difficult, but at the moment, their cornerbacks are very banged up, so Will Johnson and Max Melton, the toughest matchups, might not even be active. I don't think you should be afraid to start Juwan Jennings. And lately, Marvin Harrison has definitely earned your trust. The volume has been there with Brissett, so against the Niners, a good matchup this season, top 12, I would definitely start Marvin Harrison. If you look even closer in the last month, the Niners are actually ranking top 6 against the position. A great matchup for opposing receivers at the moment. So Harrison going to play very well. I think he's a must start this week. Definitely a top 20 receiver in my rankings. And because I like McBride and Harrison this week, they could both score a touchdown. I think Jacoby Brissett going to have a good game. It's a top 10 matchup for him against the Niners. I did pick Arizona to win because I do not trust the Niners defense. So a good spot for Brissett. He's had some streaming value. Definitely a solid superflex option with some upside. Kyler's on IR. Brissett has this job to himself. I like Brissett as a good flex play, but the matchup for Mac Jones is not good. Arizona on the year is a bottom 5 matchup for opposing quarterbacks. However, if you look at the last month, it's a little bit easier down to number 24. So just bottom 10, not bottom 5. But Mac Jones has been lights out last week against the Rams. He had over 300 yards and I believe 3 touchdowns. So not going to bench him as long as he's the starter. I think he's at worst a top 15 play. Definitely a high-end streaming option as long as Purdy stays out. But Amari DiMercado is playing pretty well. Now he's the starter in this backfield. So as long as Trey Benson is out, I would consider DiMercado a solid flex play. It feels strange given where he was at earlier in the year, but I don't trust Bam Knight. I don't trust Michael Carter. DiMercado has been a good play each of the last 2 games. And this Niners matchup ranks top 16 on the season. In the last month, it's down to number 22. So actually it's a bottom 10 downgrade, but not the most difficult you could ever find. I still think this offense will move the ball. So maybe no touchdown for DiMercado, but based on volume, I think it's worth a shot. He'll still probably get you around 8 or 9 points based on yardage alone and reception. So DiMercado, the volume should be there, a decent flex play. But honestly, Brian Robinson Jr. is at least a must roster on your bench. I doubt you're going to start him. It feels a little too cute, but this Cardinals matchup is solid, ranks top 13 this season, so no concern with a downgrade. And Brian Robinson Jr. has been earning touches, been pretty effective in this offense last couple games. Even in special teams, he's returning kickoffs with some value. So I like what I'm seeing from Brian Robinson Jr. Last week scored a touchdown, does have some value, an interesting flex option if you're desperate, but odds are he's not going to be ranked in the top 30. Odds are a backup that's not going to crack your lineup. But I could see the Niners offense play pretty poorly. At times they have looked a little bit questionable, and at some point this matchup will be a problem. They held San Francisco to 16 points first time they played them this year. So Arizona's defense just needs to be healthy. I know they got blown out by Seattle, but the Niners offense I don't think is as scary. There's a chance that the Cardinals defense could play well. It is a bottom 5 matchup for quarterbacks. So especially if Purdy gets the start and he's not 100%, I could see Arizona be a little tempting, but odds are I'll just bench them. Like I mentioned previously, anyone in this little corner here is someone I'm embarrassed to endorse, but could see it work out. Similar to the long shot players, there's some low outcomes, but also some high outcomes as well. Odds are I will just bench him, but players I'm definitely benching is Trey Benson until he gets activated. I'm not going to start him. He's on IR still, and there is still no practice update there. So at the moment, I don't think he'll play in week 11, but maybe in week 12, he'll come back. I hope so. he does have value rest of the season. And then Greg Dortch scored a rushing touchdown last week, but otherwise has no value whatsoever. Definitely benching him. Bam Knight has lost the job to DeMercado, so not going to trust him at all. And then for San Francisco, Kendrick Bourne not getting enough consistent volume, so not trusting him, only trusting Juwan and Kittle. Last week, Demarcus Robinson had more points than him, but still less than 6, so not going to trust him either. And then the Niners defense is just so banged up, not good enough. Even in division, I think they could give up 30 plus points to Brissett's offense. Not going to start San Francisco at all. And then Ricky Pearsall has value when he gets healthy, but at the moment still not practicing, so not expecting Pearsall to play. And also Ayuk, I don't think is going to be healthy this week either. I think until the bye, I don't trust Pearsall or Ayuk to come back, and that's in week 14. Don't expect them back until the playoffs. I don't think they have any value until then. So not going to start them, but long shots for this game. At some point, Purdy will come back, so maybe this is the week, but I doubt it. I don't think he'll even play. And then Michael Wilson does have some value in this offense with Brissett. He has been getting more targeted as of late. And last week, Zay Jones went down with a leg injury. So there's no competition behind Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. Michael Wilson is the next man up and will get some targets, but still feels too fluky to trust. Still too risky for my liking. Michael Wilson has never really had an elite fantasy game in his life. So not safe enough, but does have some upside. He is contributing a little bit more, but odds are won't crack 50 total yards. In Denver, I see a lot of defense. Every single position, every single category in terms of defensive stats are a downgrade. It's the toughest against Kansas City for wide receivers. They are a lockdown secondary, especially against your number one. So not excited to start a Broncos receiver this week. I'm also not excited to start a Chiefs receiver because they rank dead last in that category. So a big downgrade in general, but at the moment, I'm not sure if Pat Surtain will play. He missed last week. He went down the week before with a pec injury, and they didn't put him on IR, so it's possible he comes back. If he does, that'll be a very tough spot for someone like Rashee Rice. But otherwise, the Broncos are also bottom 2 against quarterbacks, so not an upgrade at all for Patrick Mahomes. But Mahomes has just been so good this year. I think you're still going to start him. He's been the quarterback 1 for a long stretch of time, and although off the bye he probably lost that ranking, on a per game basis he's still elite. So I don't think I can bench Mahomes. If I drafted him, I'm probably just going to roll with him regardless of the matchup, but I could see it be a problem. However, if you look at a little closer in the last month, the Broncos are not bottom 2. They actually rank number 23 in the last 4 games. So down to bottom 10, still a big downgrade though, still not a good spot for Mahomes. So not going to rank him in the top 3 this week, but still a start. I'll still probably have him in the top 10 or 12 at the very least. But the best matchup you could find against Denver would be for tight ends. So Travis Kelce is the only player I think is still like a lock in the lineup, getting a solid upgrade. And if you look at the last month, the Broncos have been actually pretty vulnerable against the position. In the last month, Denver ranks as the 9th best matchup for tight end. So top 10 upgrade for Kelce. Actually, on paper, you should be trusting Travis Kelce. But Rashee Rice, this is all going to come down to whether or not Pat Surtain is active or not. If Surtain doesn't play, then Rashee will be a top 5 play at the position. But if Surtain does start, I would bump down Rashee into the flex territory. I don't think he'd be anywhere near a safe. The upside would be capped for sure. Every receiver has a bad game against Pat Surtain. So let's monitor the reps, but at the moment, Surtain hasn't played in 2 weeks. Let's assume he misses again and assume that Rashee is a lock in the lineup. However, RJ Harvey, I think, is a guaranteed start this week because the news on J.K. Dobbins is that Dobbins isn't going to play. They're considering IR for him. He got a second opinion on his foot injury. He got rolled up on a hip drop tackle, and he is pretty injury prone in his career. So not good news for J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is not going to play in this game. So for that reason, you can't start him. Dobbins is a must bench. However, RJ Harvey might be a top 10 league winner rest of season. We know that the Broncos backfield has value, and with no Dobbins, the volume for Harvey could go upwards of 15, maybe even higher than 20 touches this week. That's been the only thing missing for RJ Harvey. He's been playing great on limited volume. Touchdowns have been there. Last week was terrible, but against the Raiders, it is also a somewhat difficult matchup. Last week, I think it was a fluke. Against the Chiefs, it's a really tough matchup, but with no J.K. Dobbins, I'm probably still going to start RJ Harvey. Odds are the volume still makes me rank him top 20. So good luck. It's not a good spot against Kansas City at all, bottom 5 matchup, but based on volume, I'll still probably start RJ Harvey. And then based on these stats, every single position gets a downgrade. The defenses for both teams are elite. So I see a lot of defense. I would be starting both the Broncos defense. I think they will be top 10 this week if you have them. They're always in your lineup, so not going to bench them or drop them. That would be crazy. They should be fine. I see a high floor with some upside for Denver, but equally as high of a floor for Kansas City. The Chiefs should play well. The Broncos offense without Dobbins should not scare you that much. The Broncos have been winning on defense, not on offense. So for that reason, I think the Chiefs are a good start, but Bo Nix is just a flex play. Bo Nix gets a much lower projection against the Chiefs this week. In division, it's going to be a close, low-scoring game, and odds are there's a lot of field goals in this matchup. But there have been times when he's been elite in fantasy, especially in the fourth quarter. I would expect a bit of a comeback from him. So he'll still probably salvage you in Superflex. I would still probably start him, probably ranked in the top 16 or so. But against the Chiefs, not in the top 10, I don't think he's a lock in the lineup. After last week, you can't feel like Bo Nix is a great quarterback, not that talented, where he's matchup proof. This Chiefs matchup is a bit scary, especially off the bye. But the matchup for receivers is terrible, so not going to trust Troy Franklin or Cortland Sutton if I don't have to. I'm definitely downgrading Sutton the most. Sutton has been brutal as of late, but in this offense, I still kind of trust his volume, so still kind of hard to like fully fade entirely. Sutton is still in the flex discussion, but definitely a big downgrade against the Chiefs. I'd rather go Troy Franklin straight up. Franklin has been more involved and reliable for touchdowns in the last few weeks. So Franklin, a low-end flex play this week, but Sutton probably right behind him. Both get a downgrade against the Chiefs. But Evan Ingram gets slightly the easier matchup here against the Chiefs. It's been somewhat easy lately. On the year, it ranks 25th. But in the last month, it actually ranks top 13. Evan Ingram might be the only player getting an upgrade in this matchup. So maybe Bo Nix will check it down to him a lot, but in general, Ingram isn't really scoring touchdowns. So without it, you'll get screwed. I think the floor is fine, but the upside is a bit capped. So just a flex play, not a top 10 tight end, but in the streaming conversation. And then I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the backfield. If Kareem Hunt is the starter, he's a solid flex play because touchdowns are kind of his calling card. In this offense, Kareem Hunt has the most rushing touchdowns of anyone. So if Pacheco doesn't start, Kareem Hunt would be my guy, but I don't feel like he has elite upside against Denver. It's not the best matchup. It is bottom 10 as well. So kind of cap ceiling, but interesting touchdown bets. So not the worst flex play, but all of this hinges on Pacheco playing or not. There were some rumors that they would expect him back off the bye, but he got hurt last year, broke his leg. I don't know what the situation with him is at the moment. So until I know that he's full in practice, I don't know if he'll start at all. At the moment, I would be benching Isaiah Pacheco, not assuming he's going to start just because he's back off the bye. He missed in week 9, and he might miss again in week 11. So at the moment, I'm benching Pacheco, flexing Kareem Hunt, but Xavier Worthy always has enough upside where he would be an interesting flex play if you're desperate. But if you look at his game log, he's so up and down. There are very few games where he's actually worth your time. And even with a touchdown, he hasn't really cracked more than 12 points almost at all this year. So I'd probably bench Xavier Worthy, but given his upside down the field, it's still kind of tempting. I'm embarrassed to tell you that Worthy is still a flex play. If you look at his stats, he's more likely a player to bench. But there's usually a second receiver in Kansas City that's worth your time. I still think Worthy is more appealing than anyone else. But if you told me it's Hollywood Brown, Juju, or Tyquan Thornton, I wouldn't be shocked entirely. You're looking for a deep shot touchdown, and all three of them could get it. But if I was going to bet on one of these three, it'd be Hollywood. Sometimes he does score touchdowns, but odds are it's not going to happen against Denver. So bench them. Odds are you're benching Worthy as well, but he is in the flex conversation at least. And then I don't trust Marvin Mims. He might still be out with a concussion, so maybe he doesn't play, but odds are he's back. That makes it too crowded, so him and Pat Bryant, I don't think are worth your time. I'll bench both of them. Brashard Smith had some opportunity against the Bills, but we did nothing with it. He was terrible, had no volume really at all against Buffalo, so not going to trust him, especially if Pacheco's healthy. No fucking chance. But I don't think Pacheco will play, so not going to start him, assuming he's out. And same with Dobbins. I don't think Dobbins will be active. It looks like he's going on IR. But that means my long shot in Denver is probably his backup handcuff. I think Jaleel McLaughlin will get more touches than Tyler Beatty. But up until this point, Beatty has been more involved. I just think McLaughlin has a better skill set. So we'll see who the backup running back is that steps up. If I had to guess, it'd be McLaughlin, but it could be Beatty. You could get burned. I don't think it's worth rostering or betting on at all. But Sean Payton does use multiple running backs. It's possible that McLaughlin does factor in if Dobbins is indeed out or just goes on IR for a while. But Noah Gray gets a solid matchup here. The Broncos have been a top 10 matchup last month for tight ends. So that would be my long shot in Kansas City. I could see them limit the receivers quite well. And if they do focus on Kelsey, maybe they forget about Noah Gray. So need a touchdown. Most likely than not, it's not going to work out. So not going to start him, but he is my long shot in a solid matchup against Denver. On Sunday Night Football, the last game of the week is Detroit at Philadelphia. And I do think you're starting most of the offensive weapons in this game. Jahmyr Gibbs went off last week against Washington, so he's definitely a no-brainer lock in the lineup. Based on draft capital, you're never benching him. But after last week, you're even more excited about Jahmyr Gibbs. But the Eagles matchup looks a little tougher, especially with the addition of Jalen Phillips and Nolan Smith coming back off IR. Their defensive line looks much tougher off the bye. So maybe Gibbs will be limited, but you know this game is probably going to be a shootout, so Gibbs will be needed to step up. I think Gibbs will play well. I would definitely start Jahmyr Gibbs, but I'm also starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. These two Lions are always locks in the lineup, and although St. Brown was outperformed by JMO last week, he still had a very high floor, very high production. Against Quinyon Mitchell, I still think he'll be fine. So starting those two Lions players with confidence, they're definitely in my lineup. But Jalen Hurts is always in my lineup, and he gets a good matchup here against Detroit, a top 11 matchup on paper. So Hurts should play well, especially throwing the ball. The receivers should play well. So I like Jalen Hurts as a must start as always. Devontae Smith, though, has been the more reliable receiver in Philadelphia. So he'll be the player I'm starting with confidence. The Lions are a top 8 matchup this week. So Devontae should have no problem here. Definitely not a downgrade against the Lions. So a lock in the lineup at this point, I would start Devontae Smith. And although Saquon has been a bit inconsistent, a lack of efficiency for him this year, I still trust him despite the Lions being the third toughest matchup for running backs. Saquon I still think is matchup proof, and I could easily see a house call touchdown because the Lions just don't tackle him effectively enough. So maybe you don't trust what you're seeing with Saquon this year. Maybe I'll downgrade him because of the matchup. Regardless, probably in the top 15. I still don't think I can fade Saquon any further than that. So still going to start him, but the matchup is tough. Might be more difficult than you think. However, AJ Brown I still think would be worth a roster spot. I don't think I'm going to be benching AJ Brown. A top 8 matchup against Detroit. Their secondary is at times good, but in general not scary at all. I think AJ Brown will be fine. And odds are it's a shootout. Odds are they have to throw against Detroit to keep up. So Brown should play well, but sometimes the volume is hit or miss with him. However, in general, Goddard has earned must-start status at tight end. Last week wasn't elite, but in general, he plays very well, so I don't think I can bench him. The Lions are a bottom 12 matchup, but who cares? Goddard, I think, is a locked-in top 10 tight end. And so is Sam Laporta, but I think he'll be on the bottom end of the top 10 this week. I think he'll be a high-end flex play at the position because the Eagles matchup is no joke. The Eagles know how to stop opposing tight ends. And if Laporta doesn't score a touchdown, sometimes his upside is capped. This is one of those weeks where I could see him be a little bit vulnerable and a little risky, but still going to rank him top 12. Odds are I'm still starting Sam Laporta just off name value. But because there's a lot of good tight ends this year and because the matchup is bad, I only think of him as a high-end flex option, not a lock in the top 10. But Jamison Williams, always a bit too risky to lock into the lineup. High upside. The matchup's not as good, though, this week as it was against Washington in Week 10. So I did tell you to start him. That rank on him, top 20, did pay off. But against Philadelphia, it is more difficult. I don't think he's a guaranteed stud. But when he plays well, the upside's elite. This week, the value could burn you. I could see a rough game against the Eagles. Their defense did really shut down the Green Bay Packers last week. So maybe it's tough, but odds are JMO still has enough upside where you're still going to flex him. And same with Dave Montgomery. Sometimes he gets burned. Sometimes he doesn't score. But even if he doesn't, the floor is still like 70 yards, and Montgomery still probably does find the end zone in this matchup. The Eagles can't really stop the run as well as anything else this year. So Montgomery should be fine. I would expect a high floor, but maybe some capped upside. All of these Lions playmakers get the ball enough to be at worst flex plays, but the defense of Philadelphia does look kind of good right now. Could be a tough matchup, tougher than you might think. So Montgomery, just a flex play, not going to rank him top 20, but a solid option if you're desperate. And then Jared Goff, I did tell you was a great start last week, but the matchup was so good against Washington. Against Philadelphia, it's just average. So in general, Goff is just a streamer, not a safe top 10 play. This matchup is not an upgrade like it was last week. So just a flex option. Odds are I'll bench him in a one quarterback league, but will be ranked in the top 16 or 20 at the very least. You'll probably get a 16, 15 point floor out of Jared Goff. But otherwise, I'm benching everyone. No thank you with Jahan Dotson. As long as AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are healthy, Dotson doesn't get enough volume to move the needle. But all three backup running backs are not worth your time. Will Shipley got the most looks last week, but Saquon's healthy, so no thanks with him. No thanks with Tank Bigsby. And A.J. Dillon, I think, was inactive last week, so no thanks with him as well. They're all too risky to bet on. But Isaac Tesla is a player I'm benching. Usually I have him in the long shot category, but this time it's Khalif Raymond. Khalif Raymond did have about 5 points last week and did factor in more than Tesla. So he's my long shot for Detroit, but I don't trust him other than the top 5 playmakers. There's just not safe enough volume for anyone else. So no thank you with Khalif Raymond. No thank you with Isaac Tesla. And against the Eagles offense, no thank you with Detroit's defense. They have played well at times, but in general, they don't scare you. They are not a safe start against Philadelphia. But I did really like what I saw from the Eagles defense last week against the Packers. Their defensive line looks elite, and then their secondary isn't bad. It's not the best, but they do have at least one very legit corner. So it's really hard to run on them. It's not easy. They looked really good on defense against Green Bay. So if it wasn't against Detroit, I'd probably consider the Eagles a must-start top 10 play, but the Lions offense definitely scares you. That's why the Eagles are a really risky proposition. They're a long shot because it feels a little too risky to trust, but I could see a lot of value. Down the stretch, they feel like they're just too talented of a roster to leave on the waiver wire. I would roster them as at worst my handcuff on the bench this week. I think they do have value rest of the season, but against the Lions, it feels a little too risky. Odds are I'll bench the Eagles. Not going to rank them top 10 if I don't have to. But this is the last game of the week. The Raiders are hosting Dallas, and I just can't really envision much defense this week. I know the Raiders did shut down Denver, but that was a division game with a lot of wind, and I think they kind of got lucky. The Broncos offense is not that impressive. So against Dallas, that defense sucks. I know they traded for Quinn Williams, but who the hell cares? The Cowboys are going to give up a lot of yards, especially to Brock Bowers, and you know the Cowboys offense will step up. So this Monday night game feels like a shootout more likely than not, and you definitely want to start your studs in this matchup. CeeDee Lamb, a lock in the lineup, so not too much to talk about. The Raiders are a top 7 matchup, so Lamb should be lights out. But Brock Bowers gets a average matchup against Dallas, but he's matchup proof, so definitely a big upgrade for him. I do not fear Dallas whatsoever. Even if they get Demarion Overshown back, no one's going to cover Bowers well enough to limit him. So I know the Broncos did, but the Cowboys don't have the same caliber defense. Bowers should be still the tight end 1. But this matchup for Ashton Genty looks amazing. The Cowboys rank as a top 6 matchup for running backs this year. So Genty always gets good volume, always worth a start. In good matchups, he has played well, especially at home. I think he'll be lights out against Dallas. I think he will have some really big plays. He will be tough to tackle. So a touchdown I think will hit. I think he'll have some good yak. I like Genty a lot this week against Dallas. A good upgrade for Genty. But Javonte Williams gets a solid average matchup against Las Vegas. It's not a big downgrade, so Javonte should play well. But they did just shut down Dobbins and Harvey last week. It's possible that Las Vegas is not as easy. If not for a lot of touchdowns that they've surrendered, it's actually been a bit difficult to run the ball on the Raiders. So maybe it's not as easy as you think, but Javonte has been a very safe start this season. I will still rank him as a top 15 running back at the worst. Odds are he'll be in the top 10. I'm going to start Dak Prescott, though. The Raiders defense doesn't scare me enough. While Dak has not stayed in the MVP conversation, there was a time when he was an MVP candidate. So it's possible that comes back to him off the bye. I think their offense got embarrassed last time. They will step up. They should play well. And I do really like this matchup for Lamb and George Pickens. So both of them probably score a touchdown. I like Dak as a very safe high-end floor play with elite upside. Dak is a top 10 quarterback this week, no doubt about it. But George Pickens in a top 7 matchup, always a top 20 receiver this year, so definitely going to start him. No doubt about it. I'm starting George Pickens in my lineup. But Jake Ferguson gets a very tough matchup, bottom 5 against the position, and at times, Ferguson has let you down. So now that Lamb is back on the field, his volume isn't as secure. If he doesn't score a touchdown, he might burn you. Ferguson, I think, is just a flex play this week. Going to be closer to tight end 12 than tight end 20, but I don't think he'll be a lock in the top 10. I think there's more good tight ends that are getting downgrades this week than bad tight ends that are getting big upgrades. So Ferguson, a bit tricky, not ideal, but probably still a high-end flex play at the position. But otherwise, the matchup for Trey Tucker is elite this season. The Cowboys can't stop any receivers, and even though on the year it's been getting a little bit better lately, it does rank number 1 on the season. So in the last month, Dallas is giving up closer like top 10 numbers, but still, who cares? It's a big upgrade. Trey Tucker should play well, some high upside for Tucker this week, but maybe the rookie wide receivers will lead to some penalties that negate his big plays. That's what happened last week. Otherwise, he was terrible against Denver, but against Dallas, he should be okay. I would consider him a solid flex play against the Cowboys. And if you look at the matchup, it is a big upgrade for Geno Smith. And if you look at the matchup 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville, he also played very well in a top 3 matchup, just like that. So that game went into overtime. Maybe that did pad the numbers a little extra, but still, I don't see anyone stopping Brock Bowers. And Genty contributes in the passing game. I also think if Trey Tucker plays well enough, you could get 3 touchdowns again from Geno Smith. So the upside's definitely there, but do you trust him? I definitely don't trust the floor. If not for the matchup, I'd definitely bench him. But in Superflex, I do think Geno is one of the more appealing streaming options of the week. Just like 2 weeks ago, I'll probably be ranking him top 20 because the Cowboys matchup is so good. That defense can't stop anyone at all this year. So Geno, a little tempting, but probably too gross to fully trust. And then otherwise, I'm benching everyone. Like Tyler Lockett looks like he's the number 2 because he has chemistry with Geno and knows Pete Carroll's system, but he's too washed, too old. I don't want to push it, but the matchup is good. Maybe there is some tempting upside. Jack Betch also going to factor in, so I don't trust either of them. The matchup is tempting, but haven't seen enough. I'll bench both of them. And then Michael Mayer does get on the field. They run a lot of 2 tight end sets, but if it's not Bowers, no thank you. I will be benching Michael Mayer. But the matchup for Ryan Flournoy and Jalen Tolbert is interesting. A third Cowboys receiver might have value. The Raiders don't really stop receivers very well, but I don't trust the volume for Tolbert or Flournoy, so I'll bench them for sure. And then I don't think Miles Sanders is coming back, but Jaden Blue doesn't get enough volume. If it's not Javonte, not going to start a backup Cowboys running back. But I don't see much defense in this game. The Raiders defense hasn't shown up very often this year, and the Cowboys offense is good. So no thank you with Las Vegas. And then even though the Cowboys might have like multiple interceptions from Geno in this game, I just don't trust them. They've been so dog shit this year. If you start the Cowboys defense, I think you are asking to lose. So bench both of them. I'm only trusting the offenses, not the defenses. And then my long shot for the Cowboys is that third Cowboys receiver that I think could have a house call. It's Kevontae Turpin, not Ryan Flournoy or Jalen Tolbert. But in general, it's just so risky. I'm not going to bet on it. No, thank you. And then my long shot for the Raiders is very tempting because the Cowboys are such a good matchup this year. But if you don't get a house call from Dante Thornton, you won't get anything. He is very dynamic, very good down the field, but he needs to get separation and take it to the house. Without the touchdown, you'll not crack 7 points. And Thornton probably won't even crack 3 points, even on 2 catches. So no thank you, it's all or nothing. And that is it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you were wondering where the other game is and you skipped ahead, missed the intro with the timestamps, I did split this video into 2 parts because it just went so long. If you're interested, it is already posted on the channel. So head over there if you would like to get all of my start decisions. But as always, I will give you all of my rankings at the end of the week once I've hammered through all of the stats and we get all of the injury news at every position. So if you don't want to miss out, ring the notification bell, hit the like button if you made it this far, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But if you still have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. I will happily answer them before kickoff on Thursday and Sunday morning when I have all of the information at that point. But my name's Adam Riancho. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.